Nikki, a self-published author and avid reader, and today I'm going to be doing a review on a book called Coging by Jordan Elizabeth. Jordan is a steampunk writer, and while that's not normally the type of genre I go to, I've read a few of her things, and she's really good, and it really doesn't matter what specific genre you read. She has a little bit of everything with those steampunk elements. So the first book of hers with the steampunk in it that I read was called Treasured Darkly, and it's more Western based, and again, it's not something I'm usually into, but I read it and I loved it, and I want to read the next one still. Like Treasured Darkly, Coging is more of a fantasy novel, and that's actually the genre that I tend to read most of all. So I'm just going to start talking about my thoughts on the book, and I'm going to try to keep spoilers to a minimum, and here we go. So this is the synopsis from Goodreads. And it says, when 15-year-old Edna Mather tears an expensive and unfamiliar pocket watch off her little brother's neck, he crumbles into a pile of cogs right before her eyes. Horrified, Edna flees for help, but encounters Ike, a thief who attempts to steal the watch before he realizes what it is, a device to power coglings. Clockwork changelings left in place of stolen children who have been forced to work in factories. Desperate to rescue her brother, Edna sets off across the kingdom to the Hags swamp, with Ike in tow. There, they learn coglings are also replacing nobility so the Hags can stage a rebellion and rule over humanity. Edna and Ike must stop the revolt, but the populace believes Hags are helpful godmothers and healers. No one wants to believe a lowly servant and a thief, especially when Ike has secrets that label them both as traitors. Together, Edna and Ike must make the kingdom trust them or stop the Hags themselves, even if Ike is forced to embrace his dark heritage, and Edna must surrender her family. So, right there from the get-go, it seemed really interesting to me and I really wanted to continue reading it, so obviously I did. To start my review, I'm just going to give a little brief background on some of the more important characters in the book. Edna Mather is the main character of this novel. She's a 15-year-old girl who works as a maid, and she has like this darkness inside of her that she tries to hold back. And she cares for her brother more than anyone else or anything, and she's very protective of him. Edna is the type of girl who's not afraid to be tough and stand up for what she believes in. Harrison is Edna's little brother, who's 8 years old. He also works in the mansion that Edna does. He's still a little kid, and Edna tries to allow him his childhood as much as possible. But even at 8 years old, he's a character who's pretty fierce when he has to be. Next, we have Ike. Ike is the character you'll meet in Chapter 4. In the synopsis, as it says, he's a thief who they meet just because he's trying to steal this watch. This watch is the only clue that Edna has to her brother, so she's not letting it out of her sight for anything. He kind of has his own agenda through this whole novel, so for the first half of the book, you kind of glimpses into his head and you see what Edna thinks of him, and you're really not sure if he's trustworthy or if he's even a good guy. He's just really shady. Then there's Rachel. Rachel is a rich girl who lives in the house that Edna works at. Edna is sort of her personal maid just because Rachel is very spoiled and she always gets what she wants. And Edna's a hardworking girl, so Rachel likes to have Edna around to take care of her. Rachel's the kind of character who really doesn't care about anybody else. She's pampered and just has barely even left her mansion to see the world or anything like that. And then there's the Hags. The Hags are more like the bad guys in this series. Most people consider them healers, as the synopsis says. But when I was reading it, Hags are more like witches, is kind of how I'm thinking of it. So they have this magic and cast spells and make potions. And they seem really helpful, but they're very manipulative people, especially the leader. So Cogling starts with Harrison being taken, and he's replaced with a mechanical version of himself. And I guess there's something wrong with this Cogling, who's supposed to be impersonating Harrison. So there's a few hints throughout the first few chapters where Edna sees that there's something wrong with her brother. Like in the book, it says that Harrison wasn't laughing or talking like he normally is, and he's very silent. Well, and Edna knows something's wrong and she thinks he's just sick. For me, if there's magic in the world and either one of my sisters was completely out of character for themselves, I would think more along the lines of, rather than just being sick, that something is seriously not right with my sisters. So the first few chapters of the book kind of just outline this world that Jordan has created, and it sets up the adventure that Edna is about to go on to try to rescue her brother. And it is a fantasy novel, so Jordan does make up a few new ideas and characters and creatures that aren't from the real world. So a couple times I had to go back and reread these descriptions of these, I don't want to say monsters, these animals or pseudo people. It's just kind of a little harder for me to get a picture in my head without having more background of where they come from, I guess. Otherwise, the beginning of the book sets up the whole storyline very well, and it just really hooked you in. Every chapter kind of ends on a cliffhanger type ending, so you want to keep reading, you want to see what happens next, and I really like that about Jordan's novel. So in chapter 4 we meet Ike. Like I said, he's a thief and you really don't know if you can trust him. Only offers to help Edna if she will pay for everything, and that way he can keep track of this watch, and there's someone who's sort of an ally. And throughout this journey that they go on, you kind of see their relationship go from not trusting each other and just needing each other to actually becoming friends and then more romantic. Their relationship, I think, is more organic than a lot of other romance novels, just because they start out as allies trying to get rid of the Hags, and it grows. So it's not like Twilight, where you see the person across the room and you're instantly in love with them. That's not love, that's lust. Let's be honest here. So I really did like that whole growth of Edna and Ike together. So when they finally get Harrison back, you'd think that, that's the whole climax of the book and it's gonna just be easy sailing for them from there. But it's not. And it just, these poor kids, their whole story just gets harder and harder. They become a target for the Hags, and then just things spiral out of control for Edna, who, again, she's 15 years old, and all she wants to do is take care of her brother, and now she's got an army of witches after her. And then Rachel is still kind of a brat, but she matures, and I really like that. In a couple other stories I've read, the character doesn't grow. And Rachel going from selfish, doesn't care about anyone, to actually wanting to help this group take down the Hags, I think is very, very good character development. So my one complaint from the entire book, this is a 45 chapter book, and I only have one complaint, so that's actually really good because I'm very nitpicky. So my thing is that when we finally found out what the darkness is, which is something I wanted to know from like the first page of the book, it kind of becomes too convenient too fast. Edna spent 40 plus chapters trying to hold it back, and then in one chapter she's able to kind of control it and use it to her benefit. But I think that's just my one thing, is if you've spent your entire life trying to ignore this part of you because you don't know what it is, and then you find out what it does and where it stems from, and then all of a sudden you're like a master at it, that doesn't happen. It doesn't matter if it's fiction. It doesn't happen. So I think the one thing Jordan could have done better is giving that darkness like a little bit of a learning curve when she finds out how to use it, rather than automatically just knowing what she's doing. So Coging starts out mostly as Edna's story as she's trying to find her brother and get him back, and it expands to an overall account of this battle between the Hags and the humans. It kind of really becomes Ike's story closer to the end. There's a lot of like holy crap moments that I had when we're talking about Ike and his heritage, and I wanted to keep reading and find out who he really is and get to know him as a character and how he relates to this war with the Hags and his past and why he's actually helping Edna, because it's really not for selfless reasons. He's kind of starts out using her, and he grows as well as throughout the story. So I really liked how the adventure they go on takes so many twists and turns for these characters and helps them develop into more relatable people. So overall, I think Cogling is a great story. It's definitely become my favorite of Jordan's books. Probably one of the top books that I've read this year, and I've already read like 8. So Cogling is a book that I would definitely recommend to anybody else who loves fantasy, or even if that's not really your thing, Jordan is an excellent writer, and I would definitely recommend her books. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter or Facebook. Nikki C's book. I'm doing a segment on book and movie adaptations, just comparing books to their movies. If you have any ideas for that one, go ahead and just leave a comment, or you can tweet me. Thanks. Bye.